Hey everybody, it's Dan. Welcome back to Men Need to Be Heard. I got a great show for you today with someone who I've been following on TikTok and enjoying his content for a couple of years now, I think. He is the man, the myth, the legend. He goes by cousin, but I call him King Carl. You didn't know I was going to do that. There's the laugh because I love your content. You make me smile as much as anyone does. And welcome to the show.
All right. Thank you, sir.
And
Great to
so,
be here.
so Carl covers many of the same topics I do, but he does it way better than I do. No, I take a little humility here, but I love your content. So why don't you introduce yourself, Carl, to the audience? Tell them a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, I am a men's right advocate, and basically that came about from a situation. I was married, and I was falsely accused of DV, domestic violation, for those that need to be kind of apprised of what that is. And essentially, this was back in 2006, if I'm not mistaken. And I found myself in a situation where, as a federal employee, I want to put that out there, I was about to lose my job because of, just these allegations. Um, when a person, particularly a man, gets charged with an allegation of abuse, sexual assault, or something like that, um, generally that person is arrested. And we have in this country what we call innocent until proven guilty. But unfortunately, when it comes to a crime or an allegation like that, it is more the reverse than anything else. You have to prove that you're innocent, or you have to prove your innocence before, you know, the entire community. I mean, your family, your friends, and all that kind of stuff. But the court system looks at you as guilty until proven innocent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's essentially how I got started, because for me, civil rights, I believe, are important. And a lot of people, a lot of American citizens, we don't really read the Constitution. We weren't taught, legal theory in high school or college, but everything that we do in society is regulated by some sort of law. So unfortunately, one of the laws that perverted the legal system was the 1994 Violence Against Women Act. And I came across this law basically after my wife at the time attacked me. And I found this document, or, codes and statutes on the kitchen table. You see, she was studying law. So I think that this was kind of a
Wait a minute.
pre-planned event. Yes, yes, sir.
So she was studying. I didn't know this part. So she was studying law,
She
and
was studying
what did
law.
you like? Come home and find this on the table that she was researching VAWA or VAWA, depending which way you say it.
Right. Well,
Wow.
essentially, what happened, to delve a little deeply into my personal background and marriage life. I was married for 5 years, and six, including the year long period that you have to get a divorce. In Maryland, they call it a limited divorce. So basically, in some states, and the law is changing, but in some states, you have to stay separated and apart from your spouse for a year
Mm-hmm.
in order to get a divorce. So essentially, before that period, things were kind of going downhill. We weren't speaking, separate bedrooms, all of that kind of stuff. And probably about a year or 2 years before that, she had lost her job. And, she came to me crying, I don't have my degree and people are going to make fun of me. And, she's a 40-year-old woman. And in my family, we were always about education. And so I told her, I said, listen, I'm going to be husband. I got it. I'll, hold it down, and you go to school. And the agreement was that you go and get your degree, law school, all of that. Because I had a small background in legal studies. And I said, you get your degree. And then after you get your degree, then I'll go after you and I'll get a law degree myself, or paralegal studies, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the agreement. So essentially, what happened was, as I stated earlier, things were kind of going downhill. Um, we weren't speaking, weren't talking, and then this time period, which a lot of guys should know, a lot of domestic disputes occur in one of two places: the bathroom or the kitchen. you know,
Pretty
so
much, yeah.
what? Yeah, so what happened was, she was preparing to leave for the day, and of course, didn't want to tell me where she was going, what she was doing. So I was going through all of that, and um, we get into this argument, and she got physical. She hit me in the face, and it was so hard that it was like she knocked me into the door jamb. This wasn't like one of those, ah, you you bad man. It wasn't a. She came from way back here, and, of course, I wasn't, paying attention. I wasn't expecting anything like that. And I've never been in a physical or violent or abusive relationship with a woman before in my life. So this was just a total shock to me. So essentially, there was a struggle, a little tussle, and after that, police were called and did all of the restraining orders and all that kind of stuff. And then I came home. And then, of course, she's not there, but I'm looking on the kitchen table and I'm like, oh my goodness, Violence Against Women Act, all of the statutes and the codes and whatever. So, a lot of my friends were saying, hey, dude, she was preparing to do this for a long time,
Yep.
you know?
That's classic silver bullet mentality, and
Exactly.
how they do it is they well, I mean, the way they do it is they do the research, they decide they're going to end the marriage or relationship, and then they start doing the research, which she clearly was doing if she had the statute there. And
Right.
then they try and goad you into a response, which is probably why she tried to hit you and get you to hit her back.
Right.
And then, so police show up at that point, or did you get into,
Yeah.
you said you had gotten arrested, so I assume they arrested you at some point?
Yes. Well, that's the part about, the constitutional rights and the aspects of VAWA that I don't agree with. And like I said, I've been doing, this men's rights and VAWA activism for close to 15 years. And what a lot of guys don't know, because, most guys would think, well, if I hit somebody, or male or female, it's what they call a simple assault.
Mm-hmm.
You might go to jail, you might not go to jail. No, no, no. That's all over with. When it comes to a woman, the police are instructed, and they have policies now under this legislation, because it's federal law. That's the first thing I need to explain,
Yes, it
is
is.
that the federal legislation then filters down to the states, and the states get money for mirroring the federal legislation. So essentially, what happened for me, to answer your question, was I called the police, she called the police. Nothing wrong with that. Police show up, they see no probable cause, nobody hurt, nobody injured, nobody bleeding, nothing. Okay. So then it's a matter of, do you want to file charges against either party? Now, because I knew the volatile um, mentality and emotional instability of my former spouse, I said, you know what, I have to file charges because she's taking it to this level. I file a restraining order, she files a restraining order. But the thing that happened was 12 hours after the incident. So it happened in the morning. And then later on that night, I hear, police cars, and, they come up to the door, they're knocking on the door. And I'm like, okay, well, and as many guys should know, you do not have to answer the door. So I didn't answer the door. Now she comes in, uses her keys, and of course I'm hearing the keys jingle in the door,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, oh my goodness, So the police come in, and one officer is, basically questioning me. Are you cousin Carl? I'm not going to use my real name,
Right, right.
but the thing is that, but it's okay, because all of my information is out there, is public. It's public information. It's in public domain. But just for this platform and program's sake, I'm not going to use my real name. But the point is that she identified me to the police because one officer was just asking me questions. A second officer came behind her and said, "We have a warrant for your arrest," and immediately put me in handcuffs. And so
Wow.
I was like, wait a minute, hold it. I filled out this very same paperwork. What's going on here? And so then, of course, they radio in and ask, do we have a warrant for arrest for? And her name is Helena Tyler. Okay. So do we have an arrest for the wife? Of course, they radio back, not at this time. So essentially, she left the house. I was arrested, taken down to, the county detention center, which I have never been arrested or in charge or in charged or in trouble with the law ever in my life. And um, it was a very emotional experience for one part because the police officer, we're talking, which I don't advise people to do. you know, don't, don't talk to the police officer. But anyway, I was emotional and I was upset, and I was like, dude, how can you do this? And he basically said, hey man, I'm just doing my job.
Right.
It's up to you to change the law. And so I didn't see any marks, I didn't see any bruises, but this happens all the time, bro. And so it was kind of funny to me because when I'm in this detention center, you know, the police officers, they're like, okay, take off your belt, take off your shoes, they're
Oh,
really, like hostile, do this, do that, over here. You heard what I said, get over here,
yep.
and I'm like, what did I get myself into? Now I'm in the detention center, and the guys are like, I'm there with real criminals, and of course everybody's asking, what happened to you? Oh, got some weed. Oh, stabbed my girl. Oh, car accident, whatever it was. And of course, I'm in there saying my wife attacked me.
I got
So
beat
I'm
up
like,
by my wife.
right, so it's like, okay, dude, So then once I was released, and I was released on my own recognizance, because the process is you go for what is called an arraignment,
Mm-hmm.
and the judge, or the commissioner, I should say, because in Maryland we have commissioners, not judges, and the commissioner read through all the statements and said, boy, you must have kicked her ass. And I said, no, didn't happen. And so she's like, well, why are you here then? And I said, because she lied. I said, none of this happened. And so then, it just so happens I used to do commercial radio in the Washington, D.C. and Baltimore metropolitan area. And she just said, you know what? I think I've heard of you before. And, because they ask you what your occupation is and stuff like that, and try to get a feel for, can you be released? Because the police took me there, took me to the detention center. I had nothing but my driver's license, just identification. And so I'm thinking, like, when I got there, oh my goodness, I got to, pay some money to get out of here. And so I was fortunate and blessed. I was released on my own recognizance. And of course, there was an active protective order. So, I had to be careful of that. I couldn't make contact. And this is something else I tell guys. When a protective order is issued, you cannot contact the other person and they cannot contact you. But it's treated differently when the male is contacting the female.
Yes, it is.
Because for me, my former spouse, she would come to the neighborhood and, meet with some of my neighbors, and yeah, I mean, she'd be out in the street. Now, the protective order is supposed to give you, if I'm not mistaken, 50 feet to 100 feet of distance from the person, right? And she would come there just every other day, just about. I'd call the police. Hey, she's out here. And of course, they wouldn't respond. They're like, what's she doing? Did she leave a note on your car? Did she do anything? Is she harassing? I said, no, but she's in violation because she's in proximity.
Right.
Well, we really can't do anything about that.
Yeah, they won't
But
touch that. Yeah.
had it been me,
Oh, you'd have
had
been
it been
arrested.
me,
You would have been
it would have
arrested.
been a different story.
Yeah.
Been arrested, absolutely, yes. And the funny part about it is that I even talked to police officers, sheriff deputies, and they will admit that there is a different policy when it comes to dealing with men than it is for women. And that's the sad part about it, because women want this equality, but then we don't have a society that actually deals in equality,
Well,
if you
that's
follow what I'm saying.
yeah. What you're talking about is again that goes back to I call it VAWA, you call it VAWA, whatever one you want to use. It really goes back to that. So when that was passed in '94, they started immediately using that, and then the Duluth model was used to reinforce it.
Exactly.
And then they two of them came together basically, and that became the way they started training the police, the judges, district attorneys, lawyers, and all of that. Now, originally, when it was done in '94, it was called the Violence Against Women Act. And it was as lopsided as it is now, is even more lopsided. And then someone took it to court, and it actually started making its way through the courts and eventually the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court kicked it, saying this is against the law. You cannot have a law that only favors one gender. It violates the Constitution. So they then tweaked it, we'll call it. But it's still,
Right.
by the way, called the Violence Against Women Act. And so everything that Carl is talking about here, I've actually sat through the police trainings. All right. I was a peer counselor for domestic violence for male victims, worked through a domestic violence shelter. I've actually sat in on the trainings that police officers were given, and everything Carl is saying, I can verify is 100% true. Those police officers were doing what they were told to do in the training, and oh, by the way, their superiors will tell them the exact same thing. In fact, they'll get in trouble if they arrest her and not him. So you're
Right.
sitting
Right.
there. Yeah. So you're sitting there in your home or wherever it was. She's standing outside. Basically, she's trying to goad you because if you go outdoors, she's got you arrested. And this is something guys need to know. Carl makes a very good point. It's a different set of standards at that point. Well, at all points. But if you respond or you in any way contact her, whether even call a phone call, an email, any of that, you're the one that's going to jail, my friend. So obviously the police did nothing at that point. You're sitting there. What happened next?
Well, essentially, I want to clarify a few things,
Sure.
because a lot of guys and women will even say, "Well, the Violence Against Women Act, it doesn't do that. Google it and you'll see."
Read it.
And the thing is that you have to be able to follow the money to understand why the law was passed. And see, what happens is each of us, as taxpayers, we pay the federal government. The federal government then takes that money and distributes it to whatever they want to appropriate funds for. I mean, it could be bald eagles, it could be steel mills, it could be whatever. Now, when it comes to the Violence Against Women Act, where the money goes, just exactly what you said. It goes to lawyers, it goes to police officers, it goes to judges, all training them, because you have to understand this is not a domestic violence law. This is a man-hating, legislation that women have created in order to protect women. But what has happened is women are now using this law, which was supposed to be a shield, but they're using it as a weapon
Exactly.
in order to get child support, in order to get a divorce, in order to get revenge, whatever you want to call it. And the thing is that a lot of men don't realize what they're up against when they encounter this situation. And it doesn't have to be a wife. It could be your mother. As long as a woman calls and she's on the 911 call, the police are coming ASAP in a hurry.
Yep.
And the thing is that was something else that would happen to me, because I had to go through a trial, and actually two trials. One was in district court. The second was circuit court. And essentially, evidence was presented, and I was like, this isn't evidence. I mean, what is this? And of course, the other part was the probable cause. I was arrested not knowing what probable cause was. Okay. I was not given any of that information. So essentially what I'm saying is that the only evidence that they did have was her written statement to the commissioner. Yep. Okay. Once we got to trial, because she presented a photograph. I should say her attorney presented a photograph, because see, here's the thing. What a lot of people miss in civil procedure or criminal procedure is that every attorney has to represent their client. But the thing is that an attorney is not supposed to manufacture evidence or present evidence that they know is not, you know, true or real evidence. And this is what happened in my case. So essentially what I did was I did a district court trial, and because of this photographic evidence, I said, I can't take the chance of this judge saying, well, I kind of believe the woman, so I'm sorry, guy, you gotta go down.
Yep.
So I opted for a jury trial. And so once it was in circuit court, then I had a jury that actually, lay people that would say, wait a minute, this woman said she was, one of the things was she was hit in the face with a closed fist. Okay, where are the marks? Where are the bruises? She said she was, her head was banged into the floor 8 or 9 times. Okay, where's the MRI? Where's the X-rays? I mean, it was like, how can you believe any of this? And of course, I went back to the court system saying, hey, listen, commissioner who took this statement, you're at fault because you believe this. Now, the thing about the commissioner statement is that what they want people to do according to the law so that they're not culpable, because this wasn't a police statement. This was to the commissioner. Mm-hmm. And the commissioner basically took the statement and then issued a warrant for arrest. The point is that had all of these things that she claimed and alleged had been done, she should have been in the hospital. If you follow what I'm saying.
Right. If it was that level of violence committed against her,
exactly.
How could she possibly be able to do what she was doing? Right.
Exactly. How could she be walking?
Yeah.
So the thing is, I mean, I'm laughing, but at the time it wasn't funny at all.
I was going to say, you weren't laughing at the time, I'm sure. You were probably scared to death. Right.
Not at all. And the thing is that, I and my attorney, we went through each point, because there are so many different things that she said. And then, of course, the jury found me not guilty. I was acquitted. But then the issue that happens with most men is that, okay, fine, you've been acquitted. You've been found not guilty. Now what do? There are very few resources and attorneys that will go after litigation like that, because now it's out of the criminal realm and into the civil realm.
It's civil, yeah.
And so now I would have to file a case against the state, and at the time I had malicious prosecution, false arrest, and false imprisonment. And of course, the statute of limitations, from what I've understood, has passed on that now. But there are still other options, and one of those options, that I am engaged in is trying to change the law in totality. And it was a couple of years ago, I was involved with some guys that were actually pursuing a civil rights claim against the Violence Against Women Act, the law itself. And unfortunately, they spent tens of thousands of dollars. And, it was at the Supreme Court level, and of course, run out of money. And, the process got exhausted, but we were close. And the thing is that when it comes to the civil rights of men, we have to understand that, like I said again, you're innocent until proven guilty. But VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act, provides that there are 2 types of policies: mandatory arrest and pro-arrest. And for the most part, that is a violation of the 4th and 5th Amendment. Mm-hmm. You cannot have a society that says, okay, we need probable cause and a statement. Basically, that's how you get arrested. You have to have 2 elements. A statement from a witness or a warrant of arrest from a judge. We can't just be out here saying, oh, somebody did this, arrest that guy, Right. And that's what's going on. And so that's the violation there. The 14th Amendment is really interesting because as like I said earlier, the law is not a domestic violence law. It is a law designed to punish men, not women.
Yeah, I mean, it is very one sided. As I said, I've been through the trainings. A couple other things that come to mind along the lines of what you're talking about is that law allows hearsay to be used, which is
Exactly.
absolutely not allowed in, I'll call it regular court. I don't know if there is such a thing, but hearsay is absolutely allowed in those cases. Um, Again, ex parte, right? So, and
Exactly.
you're living proof of it. Is this all happened without your knowledge? You never had a chance to defend yourself, and next thing you know, you're being arrested without any warning.
Well, actually, let me stop you there because
Okay.
this was an interesting part. Um, when I filed my restraining order or PTO, protective order, a lot of people, it's the same thing around the country. Um, when I went to the courthouse to file my restraining order, a couple of minutes later, she shows up, in the
Oh
courtroom.
man. Oh no.
So, so, so the ex parte part for me does not apply because the person that I was charging and cross charging, we were there. We were both in the courtroom at the same time. So it was interesting what the judge did, because the judge saw no probable cause, right, for a restraining order. And he said, okay, well, you stay upstairs and you stay downstairs, or you stay on the left side of the house, or you stay on the right side of the house.
Uh huh.
That's how we're going to do this. But you have to be separate and apart from each other, because he had not ordered me to leave the home. And see, that was significant because I did not know that the judge had the authority to remove a man from the home just on the basis of the restraining order.
So
And see, this is
you're talking about the silver bullet right there, and that.
exactly,
So I'm actually fascinated to hear you say that because they almost invariably will have removed you from the home.
exactly
So what? Why do you think he didn't in your case? Because you are by far the exception, not the rule in that case.
right. Well, I believe that there was no evidence. Okay, and again, um, there was no evidence of probable cause, but we were both there, trying to get a protective order, restraining order, and the thing was is that by her making her charges and her claim, that is what got me removed from my own house.
Right.
And see, a lot of people don't know. They're saying, "Oh, well, it's the house is in my name. It's my apartment. Doesn't matter." Once a woman calls 911 and you are arrested, you are removed from the home as a man, and then effective immediately, child custody goes to the wife or the mother of the children. Okay. So it's an automatic thing. It's not like, oh, well, let's think about it. It's automatic. You're removed from the
Right.
home, protective orders issued. And usually the protective order lasts anywhere from six months to a year. So a lot of guys, you just kind of fall into it. And that's the first step, the protective order. Now, the one thing about the protective order that a lot of guys don't know as well is that the protective order, as soon as it's issued, goes into an FBI database and it
Mm-hmm.
remains in your permanent record for as long as you live. It's
Yep.
forever.
Yep. As is, by the way, the arrest record. From when you were
Exactly.
arrested, that never goes away. So even though you were completely exonerated by a jury,
Right.
no less,
Exactly.
if someone were to Google your name, which is, I'm sure, why you don't put your name out there, because I've interviewed other guys that were completely exonerated, and the first thing that comes up when you Google their name is they got arrested for domestic violence, and you try go getting a job because the first thing every HR department does is Google your name. I mean, that's inevitable, and that explains just how bad a false allegation is because there's nothing you can do to get that removed.
Right.
And
Well, in my case, now this is the other thing. In my case, this is something that I fought for in the state of Maryland because that was my situation. I was like, wait a minute, I've been arrested. I have a criminal record, and that's going to stay out there forever.
yep.
So, so I petitioned the Maryland General Assembly, which is, the legislature of the state of Maryland, and basically got involved in what they called expungement. So essentially, I had the capability of expunging my record. In other words, taking it off the public view. But I opted not to do that because I knew that I would continue to talk about this issue. And, a lot of times I'm like, if somebody finds my information, that's fine. I'm cool with it, because I believe that the truth ultimately does set you free.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone that wants to look up my information or Google searches me or whatever, and they find that information, I'm cool with it because, like I said, I know what happened and I know what the truth is. And the thing is that that's what motivates me to help other men, because a lot of men, unfortunately, and I'll just say this, in my neighborhood, I know personally 5 men, husbands, fathers that this happened to, and a lot of guys just, it happens and they're like, well, I guess that was just my lot in life,
Right,
well,
right. There's nothing I can do about it.
right.
It's some,
Yeah.
or I,
Yes.
well, let me ask you a quick question, Carl, on that, if I may. When you were going through the whole process, did they try and do a plea deal with you? I'm sure they did.
Actually they did,
Yeah, they usually
and
do.
the thing was is that, the plea, if I remember correctly, was 6 months probation. We do what is called a batterers intervention program, and
Yep, the standard
something
VAWA
like that.
thing. Yeah, it's right out of
Yeah,
VAWA. So the reason I bring that up is, to your credit, you didn't fall for that. Most guys
right,
do. They,
right.
well,
Well,
because they,
let's talk about that real quick.
yeah, let's go. Go for it.
Because see, the thing is that once they get you in the system, the prosecutor, and this is what I had to realize way in the end. The prosecutor's job is to put your ass in jail.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. They don't care. It's not about I like you. You got a good family. They're trying to increase their win record, and then
Exactly.
of course they want to run for governor or whatever. Later on, I was tough on crime, and
Or
I'm like,
DA.
right, or exactly. So they're trying to make a criminal record off of your back. And the thing for me was, you know, um, I had to find out what this plea deal was. Now, when you do the batterers intervention program, that costs you like close to $500. You've got to pay for that.
Yes, you
And
do.
the thing is that that's part of it too, to get you in the system, to get you paying. And then of course, and I'll even say, DUIs, same situation. Once they get you in court, it's, to get you a record, to get you to be a financial slave and extort money from you. Now the point is, again, I was innocent. None of the stuff that my former spouse said was actual and true.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about it was, you mentioned the Duluth model,
Yep.
and a lot of people don't even know what that is. The Duluth model of domestic violence, and I urge all of your viewers and listeners to look that up. It basically is a unscientific model of behaviors of what they call the domestic violence cycle or wheel.
Yeah, the power and
And
control wheel.
power and control wheel, exactly. And so what happens is, if you look around the wheel, it says, he tries to control my life. He tries to keep me from spending money. He tries to, and I said, wait a
He.
minute. And that's the first thing I saw.
Yep.
He,
Yep.
he. It doesn't say your partner will or she, because a lot of these buzzwords are just feminist, talking points, coercive control, emotional intelligence, all of that stuff, toxic masculinity, in order to kind of beat men down and take away their masculinity and emasculate.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because I've done extensive research. I've actually done videos on the Duluth model. And I remember when it came out, and it was dovetailed right into VAWA. And it got basically shredded the day it came out. I mean, it is so, the modality behind it, the research is so flawed. And even the most basic person can see that. But they have hidden it, right? So they've hidden the data, they've hidden how they did the whole study and all that. But it ultimately became the Bible, for lack of a better term, on how domestic violence is handled. And to your point, it's completely skewed, right? It shows every instance under the Duluth model shows the man as the perpetrator, the woman as the victim. It is then used to teach that power and control wheel. I can't tell you how many times I saw it shoved in front of a judge, in front of, you go to these trainings and there might be 5 cops, a couple of judges, you never know who's going to be there. And they go piece by piece in some cases, but every single, she is the victim, she is the victim. And it does sink into even the most, if you and I went through them, and you get it pounded into you so much, it's going to affect you. It is. And then you get to the point where where you've gotten arrested. Now the prosecutor's involved. They've gone through all this training, and they'll try and spin it as, well, if you do this plea deal, right, you're only going to do 6 months of probation, maybe. You're going to have a protective order, the classes, everything you're telling me I've heard a million times. Guys
the other
thing,
real
cave
quick,
to that, though, and they shouldn't. That's my point.
right. The other thing is that when I was going through this expungement process in legislation, this is what the attorneys, because a lot of these legislators are attorneys as well. Mm-hmm. And they admitted to me, this is exactly what lawyers tell you to do, is to plead guilty. Just go and get it over with. Plead guilty, get it over with, put it past you. And the thing is that one attorney told me, which it made perfectly sense. When you plead guilty to, let's say you have 10 charges, that means you're accepting all 10 charges. Like, yep, I did. Now, let's suppose you only did 9 of them.
You're still guilty on all 10.
You're guilty because you're accepting all of it. And so the thing is that, now this is not legal advice, but, think clearly about not accepting the charges, because a lot of times the police will try to lie to you to coerce a confession, and the prosecutors will present evidence that they know they should not be presenting in order to make you or get you to plead guilty.
Right.
And of course, my thing was, and this is just a personal thing on my behalf, I said, I'm not going to plead guilty to something that I didn't do. I'm just not doing it. And so that was my strength through the whole process. And this was an ordeal that took close to 11 months, Mm-hmm. And so, like I said, at the time, I still had to go to work. I still had to maintain friendships and things at my job. And of course, somehow it got leaked into my professional workplace. There's that guy. That's him.
Yeah.
He's the guy that, beat his wife.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, Carl, because I do want to explore with you, you said you were a federal employee. That had to have affected you there. So you're sitting there, your family knows you've been arrested, your coworkers, even though it's supposed to all be behind the scenes. Everybody finds out about it. We all know that. How were you feeling at that point? You knew you were completely innocent. You're a strong man, obviously. Better than most, because most guys would cave and take the plea deal. I'm like you. There's no way. If I'm innocent, there's no way in hell I'm taking a plea deal. But I get why people do it. I'm not judging anyone who does. But what was it like for you emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically as you were going through that? Because I think a lot of guys that have never been through it don't understand it. And I always tell them, you haven't been through it. That doesn't mean you're not going to be going through it. So it gives them an idea of what they're going to be facing.
Exactly. Well, the first thing, you go through a whole litany of emotions. Of course, by my former spouse attacking me, that was like a betrayal. I was like, how could this woman, physically attack me and assault me? And, so that was step one. So then step 2 was self-preservation, because I knew her background, because I knew she had been studying law. And then I found the VAWA codes and statutes on the kitchen table. I was like, wait a minute, this is what's about to happen to you. She's playing a game, 2 or 3 steps ahead of you.
Yep.
You're just finding out about this today. So of course, then there was a certain fear that goes along with that. And Then, of course, after I was arrested, then came the shame and the guilt, because again, I had never been arrested before in my life, never had trouble with the law. So I was like, how did I end up here? What is going on? So now I've got self-doubt. I'm like, how did this happen? All of that kind of thing. Then I had to go back into, self-preservation mode because you've only got like 5 to 10 days before a hearing comes about for the protective order.
Mm-hmm.
After you've been arrested, you've got very little time in order to get a legal counsel and whatever you've got to do, or contact the public defender's office. And that's something interesting. I'm going to stop real quick.
Sure.
That's something interesting that VAWA does not do. It does not fund the public defender's office. And I found that very interesting because it will fund the police officers, the judges, people outside of the judicial system, the shelters. It gives money to all of that, but it does not defend the person that is accused, and that person needs the financial help the most. And
Exactly.
so the thing that I was trying to do, that's why I say in a lot of my men's rights arguments and positions, is that the Violence Against Women Act was I want to say it was kind of a necessary law. And I understand because there are people out here, including myself, that have families that have uh, been involved in situations where someone was unalived, or where someone was sexually assaulted, and what I say, rapade.
Yeah. Yep.
There's all of that. Some of that's true. But if you even look on like TikTok and some other apps, and you have women that are trying to get attention by, putting makeup on and looking like they've gotten abused or whatever, or just accidentally hit themselves in the neck with a curling iron and say, "Look what my boyfriend did."
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
And this is what I'm fighting. What I'm fighting is a change in the law. The law is definitely necessary, but back to what we were talking about earlier is that once you have been charged and you're going through the process, and after the process ends, you're kind of like on your own. you know you don't get the opportunity. And there's several people. Brian Banks comes to mind, the Duke University lacrosse guys.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many people, and let's use Johnny Depp for example. He spent close to $800,000 and only got like a $200,000 return on his legal aspects, because the state of Virginia, if I'm not mistaken, has a cap on what you can get for legal settlements. So it's like, was it worth it for him? And people in my position, you're not guilty. Yes, it is worth it because the internet is forever.
Exactly.
And the thing about it is, when you are not guilty, and this is another reason why I do what I do, because I learned, you know, early in my marriage, the first, second year, that my former spouse had done this before to a boyfriend in her hometown of Alabama. So I was like, wait a minute. you know, but every guy, I'm telling you, every guy will say, oh, my girl wouldn't do that. My wife wouldn't do
Oh
that to
yeah,
me.
you ain't kidding.
So,
Yeah.
but all it takes is a change of heart and a change of mind or whatever, and you could be hemmed up and locked up in the system. So a lot of men have to be aware and to some degree distrustful. It happened to Jonathan Majors. I mean, this guy's sprinting 5 blocks down New York City streets trying to get away from this woman, and he still got hemmed up. And the thing about it, that's an interesting case too, because you know, he there was actual probable cause. Grace Jabari's finger was, apparently broken. She had a laceration behind the ear. So that is what people go on as probable cause. You have to have something, some type of evidence to point to.
Right.
In my case, there was none. There was no probable cause, and I was arrested. And again, this happens day in and day out. particularly in family court. Because if a woman wants a divorce, all she has to do is say, "My husband is abusive." Go in there, file for divorce. Oh, he wouldn't let me spend money. He took the car, and it could be, yeah, I took the car to go to work. You know what I'm
Well, I
saying?
mean, I always say it only takes 5 words, the 5 magic words. I am afraid of him. You don't have to do anything.
Exactly.
All she's got to say is, I'm afraid of him. That's it. And
Right.
you're out the door. And
Exactly.
she's going to get custody immediately, right? And they'll tell you, well, it's just temporary. You're going to go to family court. And once that order's in place, getting it
Right.
changed is slim and none, because the
Right.
judges will always act in their own self interest. So they don't
True.
want to be
Very
the
true.
judge that issues that order, then rescinds it, and then the guy is a bad dude and does something, and then it's in the news
Right.
that, well, the judge rescinded the order. They're not going to do that. I've had judges tell me that off the record. There is no way I will rescind an order because I don't
Right.
want to end up in the news. And guys need to understand that. You brought up another really good point there, Carl, which is your ex had done it to someone else. That is very common. And I tell guys this all the time. Do your due diligence on a woman, because if they've done it once, the likelihood is they are going to do it again and again and
Right.
again. And guys, we are our own worst enemies. We really,
Well,
she's
not
not going to
only
do
that.
it to me. My
Right.
girl would never do that. And next thing you know, you're sitting in a jail cell, because been arrested for something you didn't do.
Well, not only that, it's too easy. And this is what I try to tell
That's a good
guys.
point. Yeah.
It's way too easy. It's, one of the things that I was fighting for with the change of the law is that instead of written testimony, do a videotape testimony, so that you can see what this person looked like, in their charging document. That's one thing, because a lot of times what will happen is the story will unravel, it'll unfold. And it's like, ma'am, you said this in your statement, but now you're claiming that it didn't happen. So that's where the perjury comes in. And a lot of times people don't understand, well, I'll just, take her to court for perjury. Perjury is very hard to prove. It's just like, for example, I could say, I'm going to beam up right now to the Enterprise, because it's right up there. You can see it. And the thing is, we all know that Star Trek is fictional. So, but the point is that, and this is also the legal aspect that the courts and the judges and the system doesn't want to get into. Well, everybody has to be telling the 100% exact truth. And the thing for me is that what VAWA did was allowed women, because when it came out, one of the politicians, would say, we want women to come forward.
Mm-hmm.
But now look what they're coming forward with. This happened to Bill Cosby. This happened to Trevor Bauer. This happened to Michael Irvin. I mean, it's like a woman can just be standing out here and you look at her and say, oh, he assaulted me. And it's like, wait a minute, how did this happen? And a lot of times, the only evidence you have is videotape or a witness. And like I said, it's so easy now. And this is one of the other reasons why I chose to continue doing this and continue to do this, because back to the emotional part, when I first had this happen, I said, wow, I don't want people to know that she got away with this. I'm just kind of embarrassed, and,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of guys go through this thing of, I thought I was the only one.
Exactly.
And I said to myself, because literally, I was about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, because I was really gung-ho at it, from 2006 to about 2012. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to let this go. I'm going to get a girlfriend or have a relationship or whatever. I'm just, I'm tired of this. I'm just regurgitating, and making myself feel bad and feel sick. And, so I started getting into a relationship. And 6 months into that relationship, and this is the God's honest truth, I heard God's voice come to me and say, I need you back out there. And I was like, oh my goodness. Wow. And I need you to tell your story. I need you to keep telling your story. And I said to myself, because this is what happened in the courtroom for me
Hmm.
when I was found not guilty. Of course, it was only one charge, a second degree assault, which is a misdemeanor. But the thing is that had I been found guilty, I could have lost my house. I could have lost my car. I could have lost everything, everything. And the thing is that even in going to jail, because a lot of people don't realize if you're in jail, you can't pay your rent or your
I was going
mortgage.
to say, you can't work, so you can't.
You can't work.
Yeah.
So you lose everything. And I made a promise when that gavel hit. I made a promise to God that I would do everything in my power for as long as I live to see that this did not happen to another man. And so that's my motivation.
And it's exactly mine, right? Is now I never had to deal with a charge like that. My, you know, thank God I've never dealt with a false allegation of any type. But the reason I do what I do, and it's funny the time frame you gave, because it was about 2012. I had to walk away for a while because it gets exhausting at times because
Exactly.
for a lot of reasons. You're trying to share the story. You want to help people. Unfortunately a lot of guys don't want to hear it. It's not going to happen to me. Blah blah blah. And then 3 years later they come back to me. I can't believe this happened to me. And I'm like, dude, I
Right.
tried. I told
Well,
you
well,
so.
well, the famous one, which is you should have just walked away. And see,
Yeah, yeah,
the thing is I tell guys, sometimes you can't walk away. Sometimes that is assuming that you know what's going to happen before it happens. And see what a lot of uh, female assailants do, and this is documented, they use weapons. And one of the weapons that they use is the element of surprise.
yep,
The other weapon that they use is the police and the court system because they weaponize these entire industries in order to put you in a position where you will be neutralized. And a lot of guys are like I said, a lot won't happen to me. Oh well, sorry it happened to you. And actually, the first guy that I remember this ever happening to is a good friend of mine. He family man. I went to school at Howard University, and this guy had 3 kids. And one day, we're talking, and I'm like, "Hey, how's the wife and the family?" It's like, I don't want to talk about it. And I said,
yeah,
"Well, what's going on?" I don't want to talk about it. I was like, "Okay." So a couple of months go by, and then he confides in me. He says, "Man, um, don't tell nobody, man, but I got arrested." And I was like, "Arrested for what?" And this is back in, kind of like I want to say '96.
hmm
And this is the first case that I had ever, been witness to. And he said, "Man, the wife started yelling at me. She gets in my face, and I just grabbed her and shook her by her shoulders. You know how
Uh-oh.
guys do.
Yeah, that,
Like, hey, woman, get yourself together." She called the police,
yep,
and I got arrested. And I was like, because I knew both of them. And I was like, "You're kidding." And, they took me down and I'm in jail, and of course, the other thing that a lot of guys don't know is that I only spent 12 hours in the detention center. I wasn't in jail. But the thing is that depending upon when you are arrested, you could be there for 2 or 3 days. Like, let's suppose the judge gets sick. It's too bad,
or
You
or the classic. They do it a lot too. Friday arrests.
Friday arrest.
Late
Exactly. You're
Friday
in there for the
afternoons,
weekend.
and then you're in for the weekend.
You're in
And
for the weekend.
in that weekend, they're getting everything they can to throw the book at you at your arraignment on Monday, and there is not a damn thing you can do to prepare for it because you're sitting in a jail cell. You got no phone call.
Exactly.
You might get a public defender by then who's going to then try
Exactly.
and represent you with about 3 minutes notice.
Right.
It's all planned. It's designed that way. And it's really, as you kind of touched on it, it's designed to bury the man and get him to acquiesce and take that plea deal in order to pump the numbers up. See, we got another man, right? So the funding comes out of that. The shelters benefit from it because the shelters are standing behind these women. They actually teach
Right.
them what to do, right?
Exactly.
Here's what you're going to do. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Then they go back to the feds 2 or 3, 5 years later. VAWA refunding is up. Well, we got 5 million guys charged and all that. It's a never ending cycle that's been going on for 28 years now, give or take, 29. And people just do not understand just how bad this law is. If you actually go and read the law, which, by the way, in case you don't know, was written by our current president, Joe Biden,
Exactly.
which is why I am not a fan of him. Okay. Forget
Right.
everything else. I will
Okay.
never
Well,
support the.
let
Forget
me
everything
stop you
else.
right let me stop you right there because I have to mention again, I'm a federal employee, and under the Hatch Act, I cannot,
You can't
particularly
say
during
anything,
election.
but I can.
Exactly. So
So
I do not
it's
support Donald Trump. I do not support
anyone.
Joe
You
Biden.
can't.
But for factual purposes, we have to acknowledge that he was the author of the
He
law.
was the author of it, and was the one who was largely every year, while he was still a senator, got the refunding when it came up. And I've actually reached out when he was a senator many times to meet with him, and I got rebuffed every time because I used to lobby as well. We when we were lobbying in New York State, we were focused on shared parenting and all that, but this inevitably came up. Because one of the main arguments against shared parenting is, well, domestic violence. And then we would get into the whole VAWA and all that. And like you said, these legislators know the reality. They talk to the police. I can't tell you how many police officers I've talked to, like you were talking about with the one who arrested you. They know it's BS. I've had them flat out tell me they knew it was BS, but they have to do it or they're going to lose their job.
Exactly.
My argument would always be at some point, you got to question your own morality, whether you know you're doing something you shouldn't be. But that's for another time. But this
Right.
is what people need to understand is this entire thing is designed to get men into the system and out of society. And that's really what it is. And the penalties are, even now, you've been completely exonerated, but I'm sure at some point somebody brings it up to you, or there's people that, well, yeah, you weren't convicted, but come on, Carl, you know you
Oh
did
yeah.
something. Yeah.
Yeah. You know you did something.
Yeah. And,
You
and
know you. Matter of fact, as a matter of fact, that was because now I'm thinking about what happened after my trial. You know, the state's attorney, because I basically kind of consoled her and congratulated her for not being for not convicting me. But the thing about it was her assistant came behind her and said, you know, you're guilty. We just didn't have enough evidence to prosecute you. And of course, I was like, oh my gosh,
yep.
you know, you can't even be innocent to some people because it's like, and this is where the feminist ideology comes in. All men are pedos, or all men are grapists, or all men, and there are women in the courthouse, in the system that actually believe that. And the point that to your point about the shelters, women have the choice to go to a shelter.
Mm-hmm.
But like in my wife's case, she did not do that. She didn't go to a shelter, you know, but she had the option. And back to another point you made, which is a lot of times what women will do when they're thinking about this, activity, is they will go on these shelter websites. And like you said, they have a system, a set of itinerary that this is what you got to do, this step one, step
Yep.
two, step three. And then, we will, support your legal effort or whatever you got to do. And that's the whole point that I really disagree with, because the state will support whatever criminal charge has been levied.
Yep.
Now and in my case, I'm a federal employee. I made too much money to be represented by the public defender. Plus, the public defender's office is overwhelmed because everybody is under that threshold. So everybody wants free legal service, but I had to pay, and I'm trying to remember, it was like close to $2,000 every time I showed up in court.
Yeah, it's
You
not
know,
cheap.
it's not cheap at all. And I'll never forget going to I forget the hearing that because it's like a hearing where the both parties will kind of do a negotiation. But anyway, I go in there with my attorney, and the judge is looking over my case, because he's going through the docket. He gets to me, and he stops. It's like, whoa, wait, oh hell no. you know, and, And the thing about it was, just as you mentioned, see, the year that I was arrested, probably, I want to say 6 months or so before my case came through the Prince George's County court system. I don't know if you remember the woman, Yvette Cade. She was on Oprah. She was doing a television tour. She was burned in her face. Um, I think 70% of her body. It was a huge case. And my
I don't
case,
remember it, but go ahead.
but my case came through that courtroom, like I said, 6 months after that. And that's why I elected for a jury trial, because my attorney even told me everybody is trying to knock down these domestics. They're like, everybody's afraid. The judge was removed from the case because he did not, well, he was claimed to have been condescending to this woman, Yvette Cade, saying that you're in the wrong court. If you want to, leave your husband, you need to go get a divorce. And she was asking for a protective order. So a lot of judges, they will err on the side of what they believe is caution, because they don't know the mental stability of, the person that's being charged. And I
Right.
can understand that.
Yeah.
But then that lends to, kind of a miscarriage of justice. If you're just looking after yourself and not trying to, think judiciously, because nobody can predict what somebody's going to do. But if you've just got that man that's just in a bad spot, unfortunately, you're in a bad spot, and you better get the best legal defense that you can.
Well, and the other interesting part that many people don't understand is there's this belief that protective orders actually work. Now, if the guy's a good guy like you and done nothing wrong, yeah, it's going to work because you're smart enough to know I ain't better not violate it. The bad
Right.
dudes, if you think a piece of paper is going to stop a guy who's actually committing those crimes, it doesn't do squat. And that's where, again, the innocent are paying the price for the small number of people who are actually guilty. And again, that's a miscarriage of justice. It's not supposed to be that way. You don't jail 100 guys because of what one guy did. But yet, under VAWA and under that whole dynamic, which predates that, this all started in the 70s, right? I always say the women's groups are brilliant. They are. You cannot take anything away from what they've done. It's not right, but they latched on very, very early in the 70s that the best way to get equality was to corrupt the domestic violence industry and use that to get laws passed. And it took them a while. But in 94, they pulled it off. And now here we are
Exactly.
in 2024, literally 30 years later. How many millions of men have suffered under this? How many are continuing to suffer and will continue to suffer until this law is repealed? I agree with you. You said earlier that there's some need for this. I absolutely agree with you 100%. But number one, it's not the Violence Against Women Act. It's Violence Against People Act is what it should be. Because the other side of it is, and we can talk a little bit about this, is this act is used to deny male victims any support
Very much
because
so.
it's the Violence Against Women Act. So we can't fund shelters for men, even though the Supreme Court
Exactly.
said you have to, and they don't. And it's all goes back to that. And yeah, there's a day that goes by, I get emails of two different types. I've been accused that I'm innocent, or I'm a victim and no one will help me. I hear from guys literally every single day of that. And I'm sure you do too, right?
Oh, sure, sure. And the thing is that I've worked with a couple of men's rights organizations here in Washington D.C., Maryland, and nationally. And the thing for me is that they're all doing very, very good work. As a matter of fact, one of the first ones and I'm just going to mention this for anybody that's interested, it's called the Equal Justice Foundation. They're in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a very good, I guess I want to call it legal advice or assistance of what you should think about doing if you're ever charged or convicted or whatever. And the thing about it is, just like what you said, um, the women's groups got together, and their support is overwhelming. And now men, on the other hand, because they don't understand, men are always trying to help women. That's our role. We want to provide and protect for women. So then when we find that bad man, that bad character, it's like we want to shut him down.
Right.
But here's something that's very interesting if you think about it. Um, in terms of legality, we all know or should know what statutory rapé is. And basically, that is when a male is charged with a sex act with a minor. Okay. Now, usually this can happen with an adult male, or, in this case, the example I'm going to use is two minors. Okay. Suppose you have a male basketball star and a cheerleader. They're both going to high school, so they're underage. Okay. Coach walks in, sees something going on, calls the police. They arrest the male.
Yep.
Now, the problem I have with this, and I've always had a problem with this, why do we not charge the female? Because she was participating.
Yep. Well, I'll take it even a step further because that's a classic case that you're talking about. But another perfect example is if both parties are drunk.
Right.
There's
Right.
so there's and it by the way, straight out of the Duluth model in VAWA, right? The women if a woman is drunk, she by default cannot give consent.
Cannot give consent.
If a man is drunk, that default does not apply.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
and it is used to send God knows how many men to jail. It has been used to, you see it in the colleges now often, right? Because, hey, I went to college. I got news for you. I was drinking. There were girls that were drinking. There were times we were both probably a little too far gone as far as alcohol. Things happened. And yeah, we had a little fun, right? I'm trying to put this as politely as I can.
Sure.
But I got lucky, to be honest with you, because if any one of them had later said, well, I was drunk and, he took advantage of me, I'd have been in jail. And guys, especially in college, they think they're nothing is ever going to happen to them. I can survive anything. You have no idea what it's like to face that kind of a charge. Forget domestic violence charges. You get, as you call it, a grappe charge. And I talk to these guys. Your life is destroyed at that point. And again, all you did was you had a few too many beers or whatever. My day, kamikaze shots. And so did she. And things happened, right? As we've all been 18, 20 years old. You know it. I know it. But next thing you know, because of the Duluth model, all that training, it is default. She could not give consent. And there are countries it's legally codified that way. So
Right.
that only women are affected under alcohol or drugs or anything like that and cannot give consent. But men, they have no such protection. And it's why you see often where women will actually commit those crimes and get away with it because they can't be charged under the law. United Kingdom, grape, I'm trying to put it the right way without saying the word, because, we'll get banned if we say the word, as if nobody ever knows what we're talking about. But a woman cannot be charged for, was it grappe you call it? Legally cannot be charged because you have to penetrate in order for it to be charged. So if she doesn't
Right.
penetrate, at most she can get an SA charge, which is a relatively minor thing compared to it, right? Guys need to understand this stuff. This is why I do what I do, and I know it's why you do what you do. When you're talking with guys, especially the younger ones, I want to see if you get the same response that I do. What is the response that you get from guys? Because you're an older man like me. We're beautiful. We're OGs, if we can say that, right? What's the response you get when you talk to these younger guys?
It's more like younger guys and just guys in general. It doesn't matter, because a lot of men are so oblivious to the fact that this is happening. It's a literal trap that they get caught up in. And just like you mentioned, particularly in college campuses, and I forget what legislation it is. I believe it's Title IX, where that's what funds the colleges and universities. And essentially, VAWA came in and kicked the door in on that and said that, because I've haven't met personally any college students that this has happened to, but there have been studies, there have been incidents where men, college age men were charged with rape. They were charged with SA or sexual violation, and they were charged by the university,
Yep.
right? In other words, the university has like a tribunal, and the rules of evidence and legality don't apply. It's just like, she said this. You have no way to present evidence to the contrary, and you can get kicked out of school. There have been a couple of college kids that have been in the news that, they took the college to court because there was no probable cause. Police were not called, and that's the whole thing, is that a lot of college campuses are doing a disservice to male students by doing this. If there is a legal matter, then they should actually contact the police and say, hey, listen, this is what we've got going on. We're not going to partake in this. This is
Right.
This is a criminal matter. But the schools are now getting funding from the
Yep.
Violence Against Women Act in order to, like I said, put together these tribunals and these faculty members that have no training and in assault or criminal behavior, and guys are just at a disadvantage. So it's really sad how things are unfolding. And again, like I said, I do understand that sexual violencia, that does happen. That does happen to women. Sure, you have some alpha males out here that they can't control it or whatever the case may be. But the point is that we also have a majority or a vast amount of women that are just abusing this law to the point where innocent men are being taken advantage of by the legal system.
Well, I mean, it's done in colleges, it's done in corporations, right? Best way to get a promotion if you're up against a guy and get him out, file an essay against him.
Exactly.
Yeah, you talk about the colleges, and I want to just hammer this point home because most guys that I talk to at that age have no idea this is the case. But if that charge is filed and it is the college handling it, you are not allowed to present a defense. You just have to sit there and take it, my friend.
Yeah.
There is no rules of evidence. It's not even preponderance of evidence. It's whatever she says.
Right,
that's it.
Let me stop you right there,
Sure,
because that's a very interesting concept of law. What preponderance of evidence is basically if I say, he was wearing a yellow shirt, sunglasses, hat, blah, blah, blah. Well, and that's what matches the description of the assailant. All right. That's a preponderance of evidence, right? However, what the Violence Against Women Act does is takes away what is considered clear and convincing evidence.
Right.
So in other words, a charge can be issued for an arrest under the preponderance of evidence standard and not clear and convincing. Exactly. And this is another problem that's going on, which is why I mentioned, I think that one of the things that would solve a lot of the problem is if the testimony that the woman is giving is videotape, because the tape don't lie.
Yeah.
That's what you said is what you said, and then you can't come back, which a lot of people do, and they'll say, "Well, I meant this," and that actually didn't happen, But this is what you said in the tape, and for some guys, like I said, the emotional and psychological trauma and the issues that develop just on the allegation is incredible. I mean, we have men, young men, as well as adult men, committing unaliving, self-deletion.
Yep.
Just because they can't take it. They're like, I as I tell people, I wasn't brought up in a dysfunctional household. I had two parents that both loved me, a mother and a father. I'm an only child, and there was no anything like that in my family. I never saw my parents argue, not one time. So I was totally oblivious to this stuff that that the domestic you know violencia lifestyle. I was like, where did this come from? And most guys from you know as we're taught as young children are told, little boys don't put their hands on little girls. Little boys don't hit little girls. But women aren't told jack.
Nope.
It's like if he does something, smack him. And of course the most famous was Gone with the Wind with what's that woman's name? You smack the guy.
Yeah, I've never seen the movie, but I know what you're talking about.
Right. Scarlett O'Hara.
Scarlett O'Hara. There you go. I was trying to think of the name. So
And but the point that I'm making is that women are conditioned. Our society has conditioned women to be physically violent, where from young children, boys are conditioned not to be
right.
physically, aggressive with women.
And that's the point I always make to people is if you're actually against domestic violence, you should be very much against the Violence Against Women Act because it is encouraging them to commit domestic violence. And I mean, the good news that I've seen over the last, say, 30 years or so is that the evidence is starting to come out just how much men are victims. It's
Right.
dribbling out very slowly, but it's getting out. They knew this stats back in the 90s. I was involved in all this stuff. They knew that it was pretty much 50-50, you know,
Right.
but they hid it. But you can only hide, the truth always wins out. It always comes out. And like you said, it's now being weaponized. You talk about college campuses. All right, well, the guy rejected me. I'm going to file a claim. And so now he gets thrown out of college. And then the other side of it, just quickly to mention, is sometimes because these colleges handle it themselves, the guy is actually guilty, has done it multiple times. It never gets to criminal court because they handle it in the colleges. Now you've sent a guy on the street who's actually dangerous. Hello? How does that help women, right? The,
Exactly.
the logic behind all of it makes absolutely no sense unless you see it for what it is, which is nothing more than pursuing an agenda to make women superior to men. That's what feminism is now. It wasn't originally, and I've talked about it before. It has morphed in. And I've had feminists from the 70s. I have a dear friend, I talk about her all the time, who burned her bra, marched on the streets with Steinem, all of that stuff. She despises feminism now. I mean, I would love to get her on the show. She won't come on because she's not camera shy. I would probably get banned because she would just lose her mind. I mean, it's hilarious to talk to her. But that's what people need to understand is this is the effect it's having. Again, going back to college, the reason boys aren't going to college, I talk to people all the time about this, right? There's a research. We can't understand why boys are not going to college. I'll tell you why, because they're afraid to, because they see what's happening. And that's what people need to realize. It's why men are withdrawing from the workforce. This is VAWA and all the effects, everything Carl's been through is percolating all the way through. And the only response that men have right now is to withdraw. They're withdrawing from schools, education, society, and all that. Which brings me to the next question I want to ask you, Carl, is how do we change it? You've talked about changing VAWA and all that, but what are the two or three things you think we need to do as a society to kind of fix this if we can?
Well, you know, just as you mentioned, I think it's Richard Gellis and Aaron Pizzi, which Gellis was a statistician and did the research that revealed that physical assault, intimate partner violence um, kind of happens on a mutual level between 40 and 50%, both male and female.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's a lot higher when it comes to female same-sex relationships. I bring that up because the thing is that this is what we're dealing with is how we deal with other people in relationships. So if we are to really invest in changing the law or modifying the law, we can't continue to look at the law as a male only problem.
Mm-hmm.
And another aspect is men have to get involved. I was fortunate enough to work with a group here in Washington, D.C., a group by the name of SAVE. That is SAVE, like, you save your computer stuff, stop, I forget what it's called, Stop Abusive and Violent Environments, if I'm not mistaken. And we lobbied several Congress people, senators, and we did get some changes here and there. And of course, I've worked with other individuals privately. Like I said, got as close to the Supreme Court, to changing the law. And the other thing that is also important is women can't take a back seat. I remember, off offline, we had a conversation about some of the people that follow you and that you follow. And one of them that you mentioned was the manicured mom.
Yep.
And, we had a brief conversation. And one of the things that I liked about her is that the fact she supports the efforts to change the law. Women have to also become involved in changing the law because our society is literally deteriorating from the inside out from relationships. As you said, men are becoming cautious about protecting women, about meeting women, about marrying women, and all this is going to do is devolve society. And I also tell men, don't be afraid of women, but you can't also just trust them like everything is, sugar and spice and everything nice. Because, we even have a case um, just this past week. Something came across my timeline where two women from Kentucky were on a Carnival cruise,
I saw that
and
one. Yeah.
all that, yeah,
Yeah.
they claimed they were sexually assaulted by workers in the Bahamas. And so, on the one hand, they're saying, well, this is what happened, that was happened. And of course, there are rumors and suspicions that one of them was married and, somebody's got evidence. So they just made this whole thing up. That still has to unravel and unfold. But the point that I was going to make is that the two men that were accused lost their jobs and they are in prison and they're in the Bahamas. So, and these women, what made it suspicious to me was the fact that these women went out of the country to do this. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
Got a GoFundMe. They've got all of this going on, and please feel sorry for us. And it's just a reminder of the brick lady. I don't know if your listeners
I am
remember where.
very familiar with. I did more than a few videos on the account that got banned about her.
And the thing is that, as I said, men have to become. We can't just sit back and say let somebody else do it. Because as I said, um, we're all as Americans, and this is you know where my patriotism, so to speak, comes into play, is that under the Constitution, if your legislators or your representatives are not doing what they're supposed to do, it is your job to, as a citizen of the United States, to make them aware and do your part, because you are actually the government. They represent the people, not the reverse. And so as citizens, American citizens, we have to get more involved in the legislative process, and rectify this, because like I said, a lot of guys, that's how we've got the passport bros. They're like, I'm not dealing with this. I'm out of the
I'm
country, man.
out. Yep.
There are guys that are saying, hey, listen, marriage, that ain't for me, forget it. Even my statement, date her, don't get married, but you still have the probability or possibility of something happening to you just because you are involved with a scandalous woman, and that's the sad part about it. This didn't happen 40, 50 years ago. And as we mentioned, in the political sense, both President Biden and President Trump have been accused of the same type of crime.
Yep.
Biden was accused right before he was elected, and Trump was accused with a couple of women. And matter of fact, Trump had to pay $5 million in order to settle a sexual assault lawsuit. And so, even in that, he was charged with rape, but they downgraded it to sexual assault.
Right.
So yet still the woman came out with, some sort of, and I don't know if it's true or not. I didn't follow that case. But the point is that this is the easiest way for women nowadays in order to, reach in a man's wallet um, by extorting and using, weaponizing the federal laws, the state laws to, affect an arrest and bring down a person's reputation. Now, the thing about it is men cannot readily do this to women. You can't say, oh, well, the woman did this, or the laws aren't set up that way, you know? So it's very easy for a man to be legally humiliated. I mean, we've got a Supreme Court justice that happened to was Kavanaugh.
Yep.
Same thing. Woman comes back 20 years, in college and says, "Oh, look what happened to me," and you're like, "What happened to the statute of limitations?" And that pretty much is out the window because the women have got in the legislative positions and the legal positions and changed that. So it's like you could be dating someone today, and 20 years from now, you win the lottery and says, "Oh, he graped me." It was SA.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I talk about, I mentioned earlier, I went to college. I went to college in the early 80s, 81 to 85. There is
Right.
nothing. Now, did I have some fun with some women? I'm trying to be polite about it. Sure, I
Sure.
did. Did I ever R or SA in one? No, I didn't. But there is nothing stopping them. If I, like you said, if I were to win the lottery, which was what, $500,000 yesterday, they could suddenly file charges against me. I don't even remember what I had for breakfast last week, and you're going to
Exactly.
want me to expect to defend myself and remember. I might not even remember who she is for all I know.
Right.
This is where we are at right now, and it's why things need to change. We're not. Neither one of us or anyone that I know of is ever advocating that we don't want to protect victims, actual victims, male or female, or to protect the perpetrators in any way, shape, or form. We want them fully held accountable if they actually did it. But hello, can we at least have a presumption of innocence like that? Oh, I don't know, Constitution that this whole country is based on? That's all we're asking. I really believe that. Carl, we have about 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes left. I want to give you a chance to, because you have some amazing stuff on your TikTok. Can you go ahead and share what your TikTok is? And I don't know if you have any other social medias.
Well, basically my thing is date or don't get married. You can look that up. You'll find me. Cousin Carl on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. Um, I do more TikTok than I do any other social media, but I plan to expand that and do a little bit more because like I said, we have a whole generation of men that are not only dealing with false allegations of SA and rape. We're also dealing with a mental health crisis of men that are having to deal with these issues as well. Because I tell men after they get settled, and get themselves back together, from allegations like this, you have to help and support other men because
Amen.
not every man is going to understand. I mean, your family may not even understand. But the thing is that now, because there are thousands of men every year that because that's the mass incarceration piece. Thousands of men every year are falsely accused of some sort of you know um, sexual assault or rape or whatever you want to call it. There are thousands, and it's because the woman either wanted attention or she wanted revenge or she wanted to get something out of the relationship, and that could be, like I say, child support. That could be a divorce settlement, alimony. There is something on the other end for her to obtain, and usually that's a financial gain. So both men and women, because women, like I was mentioning, the manicured mom, she has a son. Women out here with sons, you've got to realize that it's not getting better, it's getting worse. And as your son or daughter, because I do know I do know women that have been falsely accused too.
I do too.
But but the thing is that we have to hold those kind of people accountable as well. We have to change the law because after you've gone through the criminal process, you don't have the money, you know. And now, as I said, we've gone from the criminal trial where you've had to expend monies for your own defense, and now you've got to do it again in a civil proceeding.
Right.
Because that was something that I didn't really appreciate. I went to the commissioner's office and the state's attorney's office, and I said I have malicious prosecution, I have false arrest, false imprisonment. They didn't want to hear it.
Yeah, they want nothing to do with it. Yeah.
And the reason for that was because we believed her.
Right. Right. They're protecting the system. Yeah. All right. By the way, I will put links to Carl's various places down in the show notes. And Carl's mentioned Manicured Mom. Her name is Tammy. I actually had her on the podcast a few episodes ago. I'll put a link to that down below because she's an amazing woman and she does very much similar stuff to what Carl and I do. Carl, I want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to come on and talk about your own personal story. And I appreciate you shared that and helped guys. And really for all that you do. Guys, if you're not following Carl, you got to go follow him. I love your video. I'm sorry. I just love them. I watch every single one of them.
I got to say, you're the man when I'm not the man.
No. You're King Carl. I'm changing your name on you. But, it's we're both trying to do the same thing, is help raise awareness on the issues men and boys face. So, Carl, thank you for coming on.
Exactly. I appreciate it. And hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Oh, we definitely will. All right. On that note, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap the show up. Just quick note, if you've watched this far, you must have liked what you were hearing. So give me that thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. New podcasts come out every Sunday at 11 a.m. And I cover a wide variety of issues. Today, we primarily talked about VAWA. I cover everything that men and boys have to deal with in today's society, which, let's be honest, doesn't really like men and boys. And the more that you watch, the more that you share this, the more you like it. It just helps the algorithm to push it to more so that we can raise even more awareness. And I will see you next time on Men Need to Be Heard.